Hi, my name is Yi-Jia Susanne HOU, and I am a touring international concert violinist. However, my left hand pinky finger is less than 5 centimeters long, and in fact it doesn't pass the knuckle line, the first knuckle line of my other finger, as you can see. Shanghai Conservatory, I would not have been accepted to become a violin student. But luckily both my parents are violinists, and the day I was born my parents took a look at my hand, and my father was extremely disappointed in the length of my pinky finger, but he said that if she wants to and she loves it, we're going to do it anyway, meaning that he would teach me. And I have benefited from his teaching and his training all my life. He trained me 2 hours a day, every day, practiced with me to ensure that my finger posture and every single movement was precise and optimized, which is the only reason why I'm standing before you today, able to play this extraordinary instrument and make music that I love. So I am here to share with you some of the incredible knowledge and secrets behind how to get around this instrument when you have a very, very short pinky finger. And I'd like to start with the most difficult caprice ever written, which is Paganini Caprice No.1. It is the fastest piece in the world. It moves so much faster than anything with spiccato because it uses ricochet. But it also means that coordination needs to be precise and synchronization needs to be perfect. Otherwise, it just stops in the middle. So let's start with left hand, and then we will get to the right hand. Left hand. Left hand for this particular caprice is the most precise shifting that exists in the entire repertoire. We don't have a millisecond to think about it. On the end of that very 8th note of the ricochet, you hear bum ba-dum. You hear those last 8 notes, that dum ba-dum. Between those 2 notes, that's all the time we have to shift 4 fingers precisely and in tune, of course. And that's it. That means every single finger has to be in place and as close as possible to the next position. So the way that I practice this is in several different steps. Before I started learning this caprice, my father had me stretching just for this first position. He discovered that my pinky finger was not long enough to reach this position naturally. And if you notice the way that our hand is built, we can do a lot of this, but we can't do a lot of this very quickly. Stretching to the side is a little bit of a challenge, but stretching lengthwise is not. And so the workaround is that instead of stretching to the side, we stretch with our first finger back. Because 4th finger's already maximized, there's nowhere else to go. That means it's the first finger that needs to do the work. That is actually how I got to my first position, and he actually taught me to practice this position in and out of context. So I'd work on this caprice, I would work on other repertoire, I would come back to this position. This position actually comes back, it recurs throughout the caprice, so it's really a good one to internalize and develop a very strong muscle memory. And we also need to make sure that hands and fingers are in the most optimum position possible and that they are prepared for the next position, because the position changes are fast. They're too fast to think about finger to finger. We're unable to do shifts from one finger to the next finger and place every single finger as it comes, because the caprice flies by a little bit like this tempo. So as you see, we don't really have time to think about it in between the position shifts. So the first step that I take always is I practice intervals. Intervals double stops do two things. It ensures that our intonation is correct, and it also ensures that our hand position is blocked and locked, so that from one position to the next position, we know exactly how far we need to move. And if that is too far, then it's not efficient enough, and we have to find a better hand position to go to and from. So. I'll turn around so you can actually see. Notice that if it is going at a fast tempo or a slow tempo, second thing is that it allows us to transfer hand position. Now, I will sometimes turn from this side to this side so that you can actually see. So if we do this fast, so you see that the movement is consistent, even though it goes, even when I'm practicing slowly, that shift of hand position to the next, it looks identical. That's another secret to practicing fast passages. If we practice only with slow movement in between the two, that is actually not the motion that we are going to be using in the end. Okay, now to the thirds. We have very fast running thirds in this caprice. Now, in order for these to come out, the fingers need to lift, otherwise they're going to get glued onto the string. So, two things that we need to practice in these thirds. First is the motion. And you'll notice that I draw my fingers back as much as I can, and I drop. And the other thing is that this base hand position is not moving. So there's no shift of the wrist, there's no wobble here, there's no helping from other fingers. These fingers, this poor little pinky finger, and that stuck in between first and third finger, second finger, needs to go down independently. When we shift down, we shift back here. If we try to then afterwards find the 3 and 1, it's going to be totally out of tune. So we I block each of those shifts and the hand positions together. If we did just ricochet on the string, and if we can have complete command over that ricochet, that's already excellent. I hear a lot of dropping, as I was mentioning before, which actually creates this heavy bounce at the beginning, and it's a little bit like dropping a ball, and the dribble goes less and less and less and less. Whereas my method of ricochet that I was taught by my father is actually using the natural bounce of the bow, because as you see, if we simply put our bow on the string without doing anything aside from moving the bow, let me turn around so you can be sure that I'm not doing anything with my fingers. You see that the bow has a bounce by itself. So in fact, what we need to do is we need to harness this elasticity and bounce, the natural bounce within the bow in order to continue the ricochet. We do not need to force it by dropping. Of course, that can jumpstart it, but if we don't know how to sustain it afterwards, it doesn't help us when we are playing the first caprice, which just keeps going. So in order to do continuous ricochet, we need to push into the string in order to recreate and generate that natural bounce every single time. We also have to do that while the bow is at exactly the same angle on each of the strings, and then we have to change directions on the way down on the E string. When we reach the E string, we have to change directions on the way up and come back up. And so the turns are the most difficult parts in order to continue the ricochet, because we have to absorb all the momentum that is being created in one direction, and we have to go the opposite direction. So how do we do that? A couple of things. First of all, every single time that bow comes up from the natural bounce, I want you to imagine that we are absorbing the bounce and putting it back in exactly the same way. So no matter which direction it comes off the string, we are putting it back down in exactly the same way. So it's hard to slow down, but so as this comes up, my bow is already, my right elbow is already going down in order to put the bow in the right position to catch that bounce on the way up and let it go down on the next string. So, two things. One, the string crossing has to be precisely even. No jumping of the arm, because if you jump, then you're actually creating new force, new momentum, and that's not going to continue consistently a bounce on the string. And the second thing is that as we are moving down, our elbow has to be in anticipation, so that we are already in advance in order to absorb the movement on the end and come back down, come back up in the other direction. So that's right hand. The last thing that we will talk about today is the perfect fifths that occur on very, very high G string and D string on first finger. So you see what will happen here. Oh, there's another perfect fifth on the second finger here. What will happen on this first finger is if we just put it down on the string, it's going to actually split the strings and we're not actually going to get either string. So what we need to do is ensure that that first finger has got a good grip on that G string all the way up and doesn't ever let it go. And you see that the string's already splitting, but because my first finger is down enough, I can just get it to stay on my first finger long enough for that top finger to grab the D string where it needs to be played. So these all get practiced. All in blocks of intervals so that the intonation is good. And then the next step is practicing the connection between the shifts. I know that's a lot of information for one day, but I hope that within the actual episode, we'll be able to get into far more detail, slow it down, and actually work with the young artists. You can see hands-on what is happening with somebody else's hand and how we do all of these little micro adjustments. All right, thank you for tuning in.